Of course, I studied painting at the Lebanese University. I joined in 1970-71, the academic year, graduated in 1975, the year when the Civil War started. What I learned, or what my work was like in the Lebanese University, was mainly painting. We had a course of modeling, clay, but mainly painting. And I was totally involved in the process of developing my painting in oil, definitely, on canvas. We were really like, I was expressing myself fully in what I was doing. And the teacher we had then were the most important active artists in the Lebanese art scene by then. Once I remember, I think in 73, a fellow student would tell me, you know that there is a workshop in the basement of the university where you have a press and there is a teacher there that is teaching how to make prints. And that was the first time I hear of the term print or printmaking. So I was so curious to go down and check. And I met, I think for the first time, the late great artist Halim Jarda. He wasn't given a formal course. I mean, it wasn't among the syllabus of the university. It was for whoever, not even an elective, for whoever would like to know about printmaking. We were 2 or 3 students who were curious to go and check. And I learned that it's a matter of having a zinc plate. You cover it with an acid resistance material, varnish. You take a pin, sharpen it, and then use it to scratch the varnish layer. Put it in acid, so the acid will create a groove, bite into the zinc plate. Take it, clean it, ink it, rub the ink in, and then use this press, which was a beautiful machine. I was impressed by the shape of the press, on a paper, and then you have a print. That was very interesting. And I still have the very first print that I did. I think it was named An Artist with a Cat. To my astonishment, then one funny thing, anecdote, was that I realized that the guy that I painted appeared to be left-handed. So I started figuring out that you'll get a reverse image of what you drew. And I did a couple of more prints. I used to go every now I had some time. So I owe Halim Jarda, actually, that he introduced us to this technique. When the war started in 75 in Lebanon, I was traumatized, actually traumatized, because life in Beirut in the late 60s and early 70s were so pleasant. And I wasn't aware of the political structure that was like fire under the ash. I was simply, probably naive enough to believe that life is what I live. Go do your art, go visit exhibits, have fun with your friends, look at exhibitions, go to cultural centers, dig in the books. Everything was so like positive. The war and having this fanatic, basic nature, the evil nature of not accepting the other and killing people simply because they have a different opinion or because they belong to different religion was too much for me to take. So I quit painting, of course, and I left with my family to Syria, where I stayed there. I could find a job in the Syrian TV to paint backdrops of some programs. I worked 1 day a week. But then the whole life was so, you have a feeling of oppression, which was very different from life in Beirut then. Beside that, I started wondering, what is the role of art? What I have been doing? How can you compare, or justify you doing a painting of a eyeballed figure in no matter what style, enjoying the relation of colors, forms, shapes, dynamism, originality, pleasant appearance. On the other side, if you look at the reality, people are dying and being killed. And how can this coincide with this? Then I thought that maybe art should not be about what I have been doing. I began to question this, that art is so futile in comparison, when you compare it to what was going on. After I received a letter from a friend of mine who was a colleague with me in the Lebanese University, telling me, I was surprised to hear that now he is in Morocco with his wife teaching in a school. Apparently they didn't like being in Morocco. His wife wanted to go back. But the school asked him to find a substitute. Asked me, do you like to come take my place? I said, oh my God, what a trouvé. What a chance. I told him definitely. In less than 1 week, I was in Morocco. In Morocco, I started teaching. It was a school to teach rather adults who would teach art and science and everything. So I was responsible about teaching them how to teach painting and art. I think after 1 month or 2 months of my stay there, I felt like I sort of could pull myself together, and the physical, rather peaceful surrounding gave me this margin of peace of soul and mind, and started thinking of reworking again. I was in Rabat. In Rabat, I realized that art materials are rare. You could only buy canson paper, nothing else, gouache, and ink. So I said, okay, I can start. And I started working, but this time, I wanted my art to be more connected to my life, to my experience in life, to what is going on. And depicting through painting reality is definitely a way of manipulating reality. Taking a photograph of reality is registering the facts. So I thought, in order to be real and really intrinsic in my expression, I should use photography. I should use the photographs in the magazines, in the papers about the war, or about anything has to do with the human nature and the relation, or anything that you would like to express related to that trauma of violence. By the way, nowadays, the situation is different. Nowadays, you can't trust a photo because a photo could be manipulated. But back then, photograph was real, depicting the reality. So I started working using how I am going to use photography in my art. Of course, the most obvious way is to use collage, which is to cut the paper from the original newspaper or newsprint and simply adhere it on your paper support. I did this, but I didn't like it because I felt it's not professional. It's not as serious, because children do that at school. I took a magnifier and looked at the printed photo. It was a black and white photo, a printed one, not a photograph. And I noticed that it has dots. So in order to print a photography, you have to do a screen of it. This screen has dots. Whenever the dots are bigger and closer together, you see darker tone. If they are this away from each other and smaller, the area becomes lighter. And then in some area where you don't have any image, there is no dots at all. This will translate a photograph into a printed photo. I said, okay, that's great. So I bought a technical drawing pen. It was a pen used by interior designer and architect to draft, which has different thicknesses, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, so on and so forth. And I put the photo in front of me and started copying it by dotting. And okay, it looked from a distance like a photo, but the moment you get it close, it was clear that it's not a real photo. But at least I could transfer a photograph into my artwork. I didn't want now anything that has to do with the gestural paintbrush mark on my work, because I felt that it doesn't relate, not at the same level of expression. That is something else. That is the artist expressing his hand in painting, not his mind in building what may be an intellectual type of art. I wanted everything to be as cerebral, as detached from the emotion, as if I wanted to comment on what was going on in a cerebral way, in a subtle way, avoiding directness, avoiding pointing at things, avoiding spoon feeding. And then I did few works, but still wasn't very happy with the way I was copying photography or integrating them in my art, till a chance, by mere chance, I was walking in one swaya in Rabat, which is a market, and I found somebody calling that, come and see this magic product, come and see this magic product. I was curious to look what he's doing. I know they had white sheets of paper, and then he had copies of magazines. I still remember it was very much. He was with a set of small bottles with a yellow fluid in them. He put some on a cotton pad, put on the paper, tear a page of the magazine, put it on top, rub it by a spoon, and then he takes the photo, and there the image was transferred. I could not believe my eyes. I went ahead and bought the lot, because I said, this is what I want. When I got to my home/studio, I discovered that they was simply paint thinner. But I wasn't sad, I wasn't shocked, okay. And then this technique of transfer became an adopted style in my work that I continued doing, and many times joined together. I mean, the transfer with the pointed, with the technique of pointing. As if now, only now, I felt that I now allow or permit myself to use collage. So now I felt why not combine all these three effects together? And after spending 2 years in Morocco, I brought the work I did then to Beirut and had my first personal exhibit in Galerie Rencontre in Witwat that was run by Michel Fani. I think it was a shock for the public scene in Lebanon because it was different from everything or anything that was being produced then. People thought they were posters, but I was happy because I did express myself in the way or technique I wanted to do. It helped me say what I want to say. When I graduated from the Lebanese University, I got the scholarship to study abroad. But of course, it was put on hold due to the war. It wasn't until 1979 that I could benefit from it. So I came back to Lebanon, held this exhibit, and traveled to London, where I got accepted based on that was very interesting. My acceptance in the Slade School of Fine Art, University College London, was based on the portfolio of the work I did in Morocco, which has so much a graphic look that could easily be fit into any of the conventional or classical printmaking techniques. When I went to London and started my 2 years study for the master degree, they call it higher diploma, they don't call it master. I felt like in heaven. Huge workshops full of all the necessary equipments to produce etching, photo etching, silk screen printing, and lithography, of course, in different workshops. The workshop of the etching was equipped with 3 presses, and we were, I think, 15 students preparing for this. And it was like a beehive, really, full with activity and experimentation and testing. And we learned from each other's. And the teacher there was great, the head of the department, Bartolomeo dos Santos. He was from a Portuguese origin, an excellent printmaker. Of course, etching is done, as I said before, by scratching a piece of metal, either zinc or copper, ink it, and then print it in an edition. I mean, you run it in the press, you print one, then you ink the plate again, clean it, put it in the press and print it into copies as much as you want. Usually within the 10, 20, rarely into big edition when it's a commission. And then I learned silkscreen next, and it was fascinating how the impact or the surface expression of a work of art done with etching compares with that with silkscreen, which is flatter and colorful. You can't use really vivid color in etching, by the way, because the moment you put even a colorful ink, it oxidizes with the metal and becomes dull, unlike in the case of silkscreen, where you can have the chance to have vivid hues expression. Now, this issue of liking to compare became a passion for me. I started feeling why, since painting is not only an image, a photo you look at, it is beside that a surface, a texture. That's why seeing a painting printed in a magazine has nothing to do with seeing it in real. You relate, you have a dialogue with the quality of the surface, the texture. So I started mixing, using etching next to silk screen in same work. Sometimes, rarely doing silk screen on its own. Then I learned lithography at the end, I mean the third technique, where you draw with an oily substance on a special stone, and then you apply water on the stone, and then you use oily ink applied on a roller. You roll on top of the stone, and the oil adheres to the mark you create in oil and being repelled by the surface covered with water. And that's the technique of lithography, based on the principle of rejection between, simply rejection between oil and water. The technique of etching based on different levels of a surface. The moment you create two levels, you can ink either the top level or the lower one. The technique of silk screen based on the concept of allowing the ink to go through a mesh where you control blocked areas of the mesh and opened ones, so the ink can pass through the opened one, transferring to the paper the shape you created on the screen to start with. And I kept doing this work of mixing techniques, mixing material, because not for the fun of it as much as for the passion of sensing the quality of the surface of the work of art. Different effects. People in general don't pay attention to this, which maybe some artists, that it is a matter not only of shapes, colors, and it's the texture of your work of art. Of course, when we talk prints, we are talking on an impression that the artist does mainly on paper. And when you mention paper, there is a certain conditions which should be took in consideration by the artist on working on paper in general. Because the issue here is the fragility of the media itself. Paper, of course, is manufactured from chipwood or from cotton and produced in such a quantity and diversity to be used for different purposes. If the artist would like to work on paper or cardboard, he or she has to be keen on choosing a paper that is acid-free, that has no wood, because the acid, with time, it will tend to get yellowing or deteriorating, and simply the paper will be destroyed. This restriction actually is why, generally speaking, the buyers or the public would prefer to buy work done on canvas rather than done on paper. But if the artist was keen enough to use the proper acid-free paper, there is no risk at all. Paper can last as much as the canvas if it is treated properly. One main problem I faced while doing my work on paper in Lebanon was when it comes to the framing. Because the framer here has to be very knowledgeable that to use acid-free material in the framing, otherwise, like for example, you have the frame, you have the work of art, you have the glass, and then you have the backing. If this backing had acid in its composition, then this acid with time will travel through from this backing to the paper and end up with what's called foxing, which is yellow staining. 1. 2, the print itself has to be glued to the mounting board, which itself should be acid-free. And the material used to glue this artwork to it has to be acid-free. Unfortunately, these conditions were not taken in consideration. So we end up now with works, great works of art, watercolor, drawings, and etchings done on paper that are affected by the acid, transmitted to them either by the backing or by the type of tape or material they use to adhere it to the mounting board. There are safe ways of doing it, many available. And even there is a not so expensive trick that you can make if you are not sure that the backing you put behind the work on paper is acid-free. Aluminum sheet, aluminum foil is enough as a solution to put it, to separate the backing from the print itself. And then the print, of course, like any work of art, shouldn't be exposed to sunlight. And if it's lithography, it's very, very important not to be exposed to sunlight and to neon light. Many works of art in lithography ended up fading because they were exposed either to the sun or to a continuous long hours of neon light. The ink used in lithography is not as heavy duty as the ink used in etching or in silk screen. The nature, the delicate nature of printing in lithography is not as durable. Of course, let alone now, not many houses had chimneys, but in Europe it's the basic condition. Don't put a work of art on top of the chimney. Variation in temperature destroy the work. When I finished my 2 years and I got my diploma, I returned to Lebanon in '81. I came back to the Lebanese University to a teaching position in the Lebanese University because one of the conditions of the scholarship was when you come back, you have to teach for a period of 7 years at least. And I entered into the studio of printmaking. Now, by then, the university had moved from downtown, where it was in this beautiful Ottoman-style building in downtown. It moved to a residential building in the Rawshi area. The studio there that I found was the kitchen in one of the flats. I realized that the students were learning mainly lino cut or wood cut printed on a etching press, which was something undoable because the press for lithography is different from the press of wood blocks, and the etching press is something else. So I started a rehabilitation process of the atelier there, of the studio, and introduced the acid, the etching, and how to do things properly. Of course, the means, financial means of the Lebanese University wasn't good enough to buy the equipments. So I kept it to the minimum. But at least I had it now run I mean the students, they learned how to do engraving, how to do etching, how to do aquatint, how to put in the acid. We use nitric acid because we were working with zinc. And then the technique of aquatint, which is by dropping certain acid resistance powder or resin, heat it, it adheres to the surface, put it in the acid, you end up with a gradation of values. Lot of interesting manipulations. My teaching, instead of 7 years, lasted I resigned in 2009. But it was a very positive experience. And some of my students fell in love with the technique and devoted their work later for going deeper into print. We couldn't, of course, introduce the other techniques like silk screen or lithography. In 1992, I received a call from a friend, Layla Musfi, telling me that she's suggesting for the AUB to start a program of graphic design. And she asked me if I can teach some art-related classes. I met with the director and we talked about what I was supposed to teach, what is required from me. Because the concept of our teaching team then was sort of based on learning by experiencing, not learning by reading. We came with the idea of people are doing graphic design. They are doing products that's going to be to go to the print shop later, produced, okay? Isn't it better for them to learn how printing is done so that they will have a first-hand experience of what they are designing and how it is going to be, to take shape and see the light. So the course of printmaking was introduced, I mean etching and engraving. I felt, well, that's great. That's so positive. For once, you will have a proper professional printmaking studio. We ordered the equipments and machines needed, and in less than 2 or 3 months, the course was running. After that, we expanded into silk screen printing. Besides establishing both studios, I was teaching both courses. And I left in 2009 actually because I had this existential question of, am I a full-time artist or a full-time teacher? I decided that no, I should spend more time doing my art. So I cut down on teaching. I kept the Lebanese University for 4 more years. And then I'm now still attached, and I believe a lot in the issue of building the surface of the painting using the different expression effects of different material. And that's how I went later into mixed media, where I even added 3-dimensional objects structured in wood and aluminum and other objects, ready-made figurines, because I think it enriches the expression of the work. And that's what I've been doing since the mid-80s, I believe. Yeah. Now, what is important for every artist is having the chance to show his or her work. When I was still studying in the Lebanese University, I did exhibit twice 2 little works in Sirsuk Art Museum in the Salon d'Automne. And it's a nice feeling that, okay, you are not doing your art for your own joy. You share it with the public, and if it gets sold, then it's even better. And I remember I exhibited a little watercolor, and it was sold. So no matter what is the case, having your work as an artist sold gives a push and certain satisfaction, because then you feel that your statement is being appreciated and owned by someone else, by others. Of course, when I was studying in London, I had my first show in Beirut, as I told you, in '79. There was in London an Iraqi Cultural Center, which they held an exhibit. I visited, and I met there the artist Diya Azzawi. He asked me, where are you from? I told him, from Lebanon. What are you doing in England? I told him, I'm studying printmaking. He said, studying printmaking, we are in the process of organizing a biennale for the third world countries, graphic art biennale for the third world country. If you would like, you can participate. Would you like to present a work? I said, wow, this is too large for me. I'm still studying. But of course, if I can, I'll submitted one of the prints I did. And the exhibit took place actually in the Iraqi Cultural Center in London. And this is the catalog of the exhibit. And my entry was, of course, one of the works I produced at the Slade. It was this one, the title of which was Beirutus. I want to mention that when I was studying in the Slade, the main theme of all my work was the war in Lebanon and situation in Lebanon. As if now I could look at the conflict from a distance, and I could easily have the chance to express it without being intensely threatened by it. Something happened, which was that I got an honorable mention for my work. Sure, that was a great assurance coming from the viewer. But mind you, etching, engraving, printmaking in South America, in Brazil, which were considered third world countries, and the Arab world, was pretty advanced. The exhibit was supposed to be reopened in the Modern Art Museum of Baghdad. So prize winners and the jury were all invited to attend the opening in Baghdad. I was in London, so we traveled to Baghdad, and next morning I wake up hearing sirens, on the sound of sirens. I thought, what was going on? I mean, what's this? I looked out from the balcony of my room, and I saw literally rockets crossing the horizon. I said, well, for God's sake, is this a surrealistic dream or what? What's going on? Eventually, it was the first day of the war between Iraq and Iran. Unfortunately, the exhibit didn't take place, and everything was put on hold, and we were stuck in the hotel for something like a week before we could travel by bus to Amman. But funnily enough, it was a chance to build a relationship with the fellow artists, like Rashid Qureshi, like Ana Luisa Bellucci from Brazil, and others, of course. My participation in this biennale, because one of the jurors was the curator of the Norwegian International Art Biennales. It opened the door for me to be invited by the next Norwegian Art Biennale, usually held in the city of Fredrikstad. I was invited to send work to, and the circle widened and got invited by other graphic art biennales that I sent work and was happy to be accepted, and some of them I was rejected, of course. But it ended up like participating in some 14 international art biennales. When I was in Lebanon, I was keen on observing the status of printmaking as such in Lebanon, next to the regular painting practices by the artists. And I came to know that Halib Jardah actually didn't produce much prints then, but after these years. I was contacted by a friend of Ramzi Saidi, whose wife was in the alumni of the LAU, Lebanese American University. And Ramzi was an art collector. He used to befriend the artists, visit them during the years of the war in Lebanon. We became great friends. And he asked me if I can contribute and help in this exhibition which the LAU was planning to do. Of course, that was for me a great, great step to spread the notion about printmaking, or it may be called graphic art. So this is the catalog of the exhibit they held at LAU, and it had most of the artists who were strictly doing prints and those who were painter but doing prints on the side. Actually, all artists, at some time, they ventured tried their hand in printmaking. My entry there was in 1998. It was comprehensive, but to produce, such a catalog was a great, great thing. The other event which took place was an idea by Aida Shirfan, who had Shirfan Fine Art Gallery in downtown. I was introduced to her through Hussein Madi, the late Hussein Madi, who was my close friend, artist friend there. She wanted to do an exhibit merely for printmaking. And I said, wow, what a great idea. I felt keen on promoting this technique or this approach, being as I'm teaching it, producing my work through it, beside the paintings I was doing. And she did it in two parts, actually, the exhibit. And these are the invitation cards. The first one was in 2002 for a group of artists. These artists were from Lebanon and from abroad, okay? And the part two took place in 2005. She wanted to explain for the public the printmaking technique. What is printmaking? Because then it was sort of a new term or new media for the Lebanese public. And she asked me if I can explain the techniques through a film, a video, me and Hussein Madi. So we did participate together in producing a DVD that was available for people to, if they would like to know more about the technicalities of these techniques. I explained about lithography mainly and silk screen, and Hussein Madi talked more about etching. I talked about engraving, and was a great document actually to promote this media. Because I kept an eye on what's going on in the printmaking abroad, I received an invitation from Tunisia. That was in 1988. And I sent work for them and was accepted, this one. It was printed in black and white. So I was pleased to know that other Arab countries are also keen on promoting this technique. Till I received the biggest thing was the Egyptian Trinale of printmaking that was done in 1993. I sent this lithograph, Dolls at Play. It was an international one that included really almost every country with artists producing prints. Mona Basile Sahnawi was there as well. Halim Jirda, Ahsen Madi. Beside these biennales or exhibitions that took place in the Arab world, I did participate in other biennales, mainly in Norway, and then in Japan, France, in Belgium, and in Brazil. And I used to receive many invitations. Remember, it was the years of the war, so it was very difficult to communicate. We used the by post. Sending the work was a problem because I counted on people traveling to give them so that they can post it there. But it was a great journey.